busy at the time. And those sheets for merchants, they contain the arrival and departure schedules of ships, traffic information, also prices of the goods, of the commodities, and also reported the movements of the Barbary pirates that would obviously attack ships and damage the trade in the Mediterranean. The Milanese newsletters reported primarily on events related to the Spanish court, because the Duchy of Milan was a Spanish dominion at the time, and also collected many information from the Flanders and from neighboring Serbia. The next one, please, Venice. There's an interesting curiosity here. Maybe you're aware of it, but I think it's worth mentioning. The term gazette originated in Venice in 1539. It originally referred to a coin called gazzetta in Venetian. And since the cost of the newsletters corresponded to that of that very coin, the ships themselves started to be called gazzette, which later was translated into other languages as gazette. There's an image over there, at the bottom. You see the coin above the gazzetta, and at the bottom right you see that's a French. It's a gazette published in Constantinople in French language, printed, dating back to, I can't see the year now, so I'll type it. 1632. Yeah, that's an example of gazette published in the Levant, in this case, in French language. Venice was the Italian city with largest production of this type of newsletters, which were distributed in other Italian and European cities. They were overseen by the Republican government of the Repubblica Serenissima of Venice, which nevertheless allowed a certain freedom of expression. Handwritten newsletters generally contained fresher and more unconstrained news. But there was obviously not much control over them, so they were even a good business. I would like to mention a gentleman named Panfilo Brancacci, who, as early as 1585, started to collect information on currency exchange rates and commodity prices, and was printing leaflets with this information, and he became quite wealthy because of this type of business. We can go back to we can go on to the next one. So periodicals in the 17th and 18th centuries. The first, towards the middle 17th century, the first regular periodicals appeared. And they were generally distributed once or twice a month. The oldest was published in Tuscany in 1636. Then Milan and Genoa followed shortly afterwards, during the same decade. In 1642, for example, there were already two Genoese newspapers. One was politically leaning towards Spain, and the other one was leaning more towards France. This is quite interesting. After a few years, the pro-French was actually banned.
Recording in progress.
Because it was too much leaning towards France, which was not a friendly country. In Naples, Kingdom of Sicily, which was actually the most populous city in the Italian peninsula in the mid-17th century, they started to publish also local papers, newspapers, in 1642, so in the very same period. The Papal States also, I don't want to mention everything because otherwise too much confusion. What is interesting is that, for example, in Venice, even when the printing techniques were already spread and widely used, in Venice they continued to publish gazettes that were handwritten. So they were basically selling handwritten gazettes for a longer period compared to other citizens. The daily newspaper Avanti, socialist newspaper, which would later have Benito Mussolini as its chief editor between 1912 and 1914. Yeah, then I wrote here it's about Abyssinia, what I just said. Yeah, towards the end of the 19th century, correspondence became increasingly indispensable to a newspaper. Luigi Barzini was the most known Italian correspondent at the time. In the same period, protests broke out in Milan, 1898, against working conditions and rising bread prices, which all erupted into riots and fierce government crackdown. Several newspapers at the time, several editors who reported the news were arrested, and their operations were suspended for periods up to 2 years. Even La Gazzetta dello Sport, which is the main Italian sport magazine, suffered something like that because they also reported the news of the government crackdown. 1902, telephone connections were established between Rome, Milan, Turin, Paris, and the rest of the continent. Stenographers arrived in the editorial offices. They appeared in these years, tasked with transcribing articles dictated over the telephone by correspondents in other cities or abroad. First newspaper to use telephone and shorthand was Corriere della Sera, which became really, really important within years. And in 1906, it had already circulation of 150,000 copies. Yeah, 1908, the first union of Italian journalists was established. It still exists today with the same name, and it's still responsible, obviously, for drafting national collective labor agreements just for the journalists. Now let's take a look at the most widely circulated newspaper at the turn of the century. Yeah, it's just you just need to see a few figures here. Yeah, Il Secolo was still the most important. It would be overtaken, like I said, by Corriere della Sera just a few years later. But this is the only year for which I could find detailed circulation details. It's not, it's just to show the average circulation at the time. Fascist era. During the fascist period, era, 1922 to 1943, journalists were gradually entrusted with a truly pedagogical task to guide the public opinion and consensus with the aim of making fascism a mass regime. In 1924, independent newspapers had a total circulation of 4 million copies, roughly 400,000 in 1924, so before the Leggi Fascistissime, the law that basically turned the fascism into an authoritarian regime. 10% of the papers were pro-fascism, and whereas the remaining 90% they were against. Everything changed after the assassination of Giacomo Matteotti, who was a journalist, a lawyer, and a member of the parliament, who was killed because he denounced, obviously, the violences, the increasing violence of the regime, and a popular outrage and crime that this crime sparked forced Mussolini to crack down and accelerate the suppression of the freedom of press in the country with Leggi Fascistissime, like I said, and other initiatives. The very same year, 1924, the regime founded the Istituto Luce, which was the only official audiovisual information source, openly committed to manipulating the public opinion. Soon after, aligned journalists became a privileged class with special protections. They had their own union, so basically the FNSI was suppressed, and instead was opened the Sindacato Fascista dei Giornalisti, and a professional register for professional register for journalists was also established by Mussolini in 1925, with mandatory registration for journalists, and at the same time, a press law was passed, We are still in 1925. A law that stipulated, which stipulated that newspapers could be published only if the editor-in-chief was recognized by an attorney general and approved by the Ministry of Popular Culture. 1 year later, 1926, the IMPG, which still exists today and is the National Institute of Social Security for Journalists, was established. But that year, however, marked the end of press freedom. Initially, it was established that the Attorney General would be subordinated to a local prefect, after which the suppression of all newspapers opposing the regime was formally enacted. So basically, there was no freedom of press at all anymore. In this oppressive climate, with the transformation of the democratic state into an authoritarian one, the Italian underground press flourished significantly. Some suppressed newspapers continued publication in exile. The socialist daily Avanti, for example, started to be published in Paris and Zurich. L'Unità, the communist daily paper founded by Antonio Gramsci, was published for a while in Lille, in France. What about major daily papers? Those that were not suppressed by the regime, they obviously had to align with the regime, and for this reason, they managed to survive. Was the Republic? Yeah, the next one. Should I go faster, Professor Crooke? What do you think? I think. How much time do we have?
Well, I think you're doing absolutely brilliantly.
Just tell me if you want me to skip some part.
No, carry on. We've allocated 2 hours, so
okay.
Should you finish around in 20-25 minutes time, which is about the right pace, then we can have a discussion, take questions. No, you're doing brilliantly. Really, very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And we're all thinking, how does this compare to the history of the United Kingdom? It's fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah. My pleasure. So towards the Republic, with the fall of the fascist regime finally in 1943, freedom of the press was gradually restored, not instantly, obviously. First of all, the country was still partially occupied by the Nazis, and we had the Allies, coming up from Sicily and conquering the country slowly. So the situation was extremely confused. So it was a lengthy process. The publication of fascist-leaning newspapers was obviously banned, but the Ministry of Popular Culture retained the power to veto the appointment of editors. In the territories that were gradually liberated by the Allies, Italian law did not apply, and because the Allied retained the monopoly on news distribution and retained the power to issue publication authorizations. In 1944, the Albo Professionale, so the professional register, was transferred to a ministerial appointed commission. And the same year, the old Union of Journalists that had been dissolved by the fascist regime was reinstated. The ANSA, this is important. In January 1945, so just a few months before the end of the war, the National, literally ANSA means National Associated Press Agency, was founded. It's still a very, as we will see it later, ANSA is considered today the most reliable source of news in Italy by a survey, even more than state TV and other media. We will see it later. And it's now considered one of the most reliable news sources in Italy. I wrote it here. A few months later, freedom of the press was finally restored. Party press experienced a revival. All political parties established an official press organ, and these were all supported with fixed amounts of their own budgets. In 1945, so when the war ended, the highest number of newspapers was Rome, followed by Milan. Republican era.
until the referendum of June the 2nd, 1946, which led to the birth of the Italian Republic, newspaper enjoyed a fair degree of autonomy from the views of their owners, who were repossessing their respective businesses. This freedom benefited the Republican cause and contributed to the abolition of the monarchy. With the birth of the democratic state and return to freedom of press, which is enshrined in the new Republican Constitution as a cornerstone of democracy, journalists, as guardian of pluralism, confirmed their central role in social coexistence. Most tangible testimony to the profession's continuity came in 1946 with the renewal of the national labor contract. Its text preserved all the economic and regulatory principle established by the collective agreement signed during the fascist era. Although, of course, purging it with the lexical expression typical of the fascist regime. Within this framework, IMPG, also the Institute of Social Security I already mentioned, was preserved and consolidated, and continuing to guarantee the profession better pension and welfare benefits than those granted to other categories of workers. And the ALBO was also preserved and kept in place. Only later in the 1963 I'll tell you about that one later. There will be also the establishment of the order, ODG, the Order of the Journalist, of which I'm a member. State radio and television. After the war, radio and television, which, despite the change of the name from AR to RAI, remained a public company and the emanation of the government. This joined the traditional media with growing importance, obviously. The entire professional life of journalists unfolded within the framework of the collective labor that I already mentioned, and this outlined the professional's career path and remuneration, and many aspects of the profession of the journalist. In fact, it did not limit itself to establishing the minimum salary, but also defined seniority advancement, leave, social security benefits, and other aspects of the life of a journalist. And despite the inevitable fluctuations and changes, the situation remained substantially unchanged until the 1960s, favored by the economic boom and growth in prosperity, which contributed to further improving the conditions of the journalists. Some dates and curiosities. The publishers founded their own association in 1950. We have some figures here. In 1952, we had 107 daily newspapers in Italy, and their number increased slightly in 1959. It peaked basically in 1959, then decreased again in the early 60s. Just to show you the trend, obviously the figures, we don't have to remember them, but they give you an idea. In 1956, during the Soviet occupation of Hungary, an Italian journalist purchased the Bell Howell 60mm camera and autonomously, without being asked by the employer, he captured exclusive footage and became pretty known for having done that. And some consider this guy. Sorry, I couldn't find his name. Sorry, I forgot to find his name, but he's credited by many as one of the very first journalists photojournalists in Europe. Sorry, journalists that provide, let's say, footage, actual footage, not only pictures, but filming the events. 1963, the Order of Journalists was established. This is still existing and still governs the ethics of journalism and the profession. I don't want to mention too many figures. 1968, the first Italian daily newspaper to be offset printed. It happened in 1968 and was the Messaggero Veneto in Udine. Quite a small paper, but it was quite advanced. Yeah, by early 1980s, all national newspapers switched to phototypesetting. These technological changes had a positive impact on newspaper circulation for a while before what you will see later. A decrease in sales. We will see the causes why that happened. But anyway, between 1977 and 1984, number of printed copies increased dramatically from 4.8 million to 6.2 million per day. I mean, the combined the newspapers, and this trend culminated in 1990 with a single day overall circulation of 6.8 million. Yeah, that was the very peak in the history of Italian newspaper business. Yeah. 14 new newspapers were also launched between 1974 and 1990, including La Repubblica, which is one of the most important newspapers. It's a social democratic paper, still very successful nowadays. Yeah, sidebar, years of lead. This is a period of, it was one of the most dramatic, probably the most dramatic period of our Republican history. Between the late 60s, early 1990s, Italy experienced the so-called anni di piombo, years of lead, characterized by political extremism that led to street violence, armed struggle, countless terrorist attacks. Among the victims, magistrates, soldiers, police officers, activists, there were also many journalists. 3 of them are very well known. They are those gentlemen that you can see in the gentleman in the center is sitting in the car is Mino Pecorelli, a lawyer and a journalist who was investigative journalist that was killed in 1979. Giuseppe Impastato is the young guy on the bottom left. He was a Sicilian radio journalist murdered for exposing the links between the mafia and the politics in the years of lead. And Walter Tobagi, bottom right. He was a journalist of the Corriere della Sera. He was murdered by a far-left terrorist group for denouncing the danger of radicalization in factories and other workplaces. Yeah, we can go to the next one. A sore point, yeah. The progressive decline of journalistic work, which started in this period. The first substantial changes in Italian publishing and journalism landscape date back to the 1970s and had several causes. Among these, the natural dynamics of publishing ownership, global recession, the growth of radio and television news, which altered the schedules, population habits, distribution of advertising revenue, and so on. Even the social and the political levels, at the social and political levels, the 70s were a watershed in Italian history, with inflation galloping into double digits and well-being slowed down, generating dissatisfaction and alarm that would also affect the journalistic profession. In 1974, a national healthcare reform guaranteed equal healthcare coverage to everyone in Italy, which is something obviously very positive. But this had negative repercussions on the INPGI, so on the social security of the journalists, because there was less money available for this fund, and journalists had to compensate for that lack. So basically, they experienced a decrease in their income because of that. So Casagit, this Cassa, this fund was paid for by the journalists themselves. Another fraying of the profession's privileges was caused by the progressive loosening of the rules governing the professional internships. Many publishers, they were obviously always trying to reduce costs. They stopped hiring interns, and newsrooms teamed with the semi-legal workers, so new figures who were not gray figures, I would say, because they were not white, they were not black. It was something new, and this altered the market dramatically. So junior people eager to enter the profession were basically expecting to be hired as interns, but most of the time this never occurred. Then a subsequent interpretation of the internship law was introduced with the introduction of new roles. I just mentioned it. There was a specific figure that was introduced and tolerated called COCOCO, which stands for a coordinated continuous collaborator, basically. And these semi-professional, because they were not professional, were allowed to sit the state exams, but provided that they could demonstrate they could earn a living from journalistic collaboration. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed. So basically, many semi-professionals started to basically join the profession of journalist without having been trained in the right way. All these measures taken during this phase aim to address anomalous situations, basically, but they exacerbated the burden on a profession that would become increasingly impoverished. Then also something happened, the breaking of the RAI monopoly and liberalization of radio and TV broadcasting. That also further affected the status of journalists. This was 1976, after 1976. More job opportunities opened up, that's true, but the contractual diversification arose, resulting in a further reduction in the rights of and the status of journalists. So the profession became more and more impoverished. There is now, a graph. I found this graph with newspaper circulation at the time. We don't have, obviously, to go through all the numbers. On the horizontal axis, we have the timeline. On the left, we have the sales. And what we can see is that basically until a certain stage, the sales were pretty high, then a decline started to kick in and affect heavily the sales. It's nice to see let me actually find it. So also in front of me.
Bruno, I'm going to have to quit the seminar, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I do apologize for leaving early, but thank you very much for that.
Oh, no problem.
Very illuminating lecture, and it was most fascinating. And I just actually wanted. I know that I'm ducking out early, but I did actually want to ask you whether there was in Italian journalism today the kind of fault line that exists in Britain. We have this sort of Eurosceptic v pro EU fault line that goes right through, well, even politics, and in our newspapers. In the age of Giorgia Meloni, is there a similar kind of fault line in Italian journalism today in newspapers?
Absolutely. I mean, there are papers, and not TVs are, I would say, quite balanced, but in the newspapers you can find everything.
Right.
We have a pro-Russia daily paper celebrating Putin. We have everything. So
right.
It's, absolutely. I think it's we should talk about it, but
Okay. Well, I very much hope that in the CIOJ journal we can have a piece on what you've said that we can send to our members.
Sure.
Yeah. But will you forgive
Absolutely.
me? I have to depart, and with a heavy heart. But all the very best to you, and thank you, everybody.
Nice meeting you. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Stuart. We can carry on. Yeah, we will invite you to write an article if you want. But if you're too busy, and if you wanted me to write a report on the session, I'd be very happy to do so.
Yeah, of course. I can do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll use AI. No, I'm kidding.
No, I won't use AI. So.
Never.
It can't write as well as I can. Never. Nor you.
Yeah. Anyway, I put this graph only because it's like I said, we don't need to study the figures, but just to see that. I mean, it represents an ideal bridge between what I've just said and what we'll find in the next section of the seminar. So the decrease of the sales, basically, and the crisis of journalism. So part 3, journalism in Italy today. The Italian media system, historically characterized by marked propensity to align with parties or even broader ideological camps, is conventionally classified within the so-called Mediterranean or polarized pluralist model, which is one of the 3 models of media politics relation conceptualized by Daniel C. Hallin and Paolo Mancini. The Italian media landscape is characterized by a strong television sector, an economically weak but influential press, and a tradition of political partisanship in journalism. Yeah, these are all these characteristics remain relevant today, and constitute stable elements in the journalistic culture. Anyway, Italy is a country of almost 60 million inhabitants population, and is one of the largest economies in Europe. It has a quite rich, internally differentiated media market. Journalism is diverse, although newspaper reading is relatively modest. We will see the figures later. And television has long played a central role. The ownership concentration. Yeah, while European integration has spurred reforms promoting media liberalization and pluralism, political interference and growing ownership concentration have undermined the independence of journalism. A case in point is obviously that of the late tycoon Silvio Berlusconi, who, in addition to controlling 3 private mainstream channels of Mediaset Group, and also a major daily newspaper, Il Giornale, through his brother Paolo, also exerted a certain influence over the public broadcaster, RAI, after entering politics in 1994. Anyway, the increase in the increase in media concentration is ongoing. Berlusconi is dead, but there is still his experts are still around, and there are also other groups. Urbano Cairo, who happens to be also the president of Torino Calcio, Torino Football Club. He controls RCS Media Group, which owns Corriere della Sera, Gazzetta dello Sport, basically 2 of the 3 major newspapers in Italy, and also other periodicals. And this group includes interests held by Mediobanca, a big business bank, Unipol, an insurance company, Trenitalia, so one of the railway company, private railway companies in Italy, and also there is a Chinese participation, also China National Chemical Corporation. And Cairo, Urbano Cairo also owns one of the mainstream television channel, La Sette, which is politically pretty close to, I would say, yeah, it's definitely leftist, pretty close to Movimento 5 Stelle, 5-star movement. And anyway, it's not important at this stage. But then JD Group is, is controlled by Exor, the Elkann Agnelli family, owners of Ferrari, Stellantis, Juventus Football Club, The Economist, and also Louboutin, fashion brand and other. They control La Stampa and La Repubblica. But right now, these 2 publications are currently up for sale. And there are rumors that Antenna Group, which is a great Greek media company, might take over the 2 daily papers. We have also Antonio Angelucci, a center-right member of the parliament, who owns four daily newspapers. Il Giornale, which was previously owned by Berlusconi family, then Libero, Il Tempo, La Verità. And he owns a holding company controlled by a Luxembourg-based company. Yeah. Then Caltagirone Group, owner of Il Messaggero, which also controls the investment bank Mediobanca that I already mentioned, which has a stake in RCS. So they are kind of linked to the group chaired by Urbano Cairo that I mentioned at the beginning. So they're quite intertwined, all these groups. And another group is Monrif Group, which publishes 5 daily printed papers plus Quotidiano.net, which is an online news website, platform, let's say. So the above threats to journalistic independence and pluralism are compounded by other global trends. I mentioned already the precariousness of journalistic work, but also the erosion of traditional revenue models, growing number of legal attacks and censorship attempts against journalists. Now let's take a look at the organization and bodies. I already mentioned most of them because they were established during the fascist period or slightly afterwards, like the ODG. Okay, ODG, let's have a look at it, because the National Order of Journalists. I don't call it association because there is also an association. This is literally, and I would say, an order. I don't know if it's properly translated into English, but it's not. It's like a bar association, but for journalists, not for lawyers. Let's say something like that. So it's an association order, let's say. Public body established in 1963. I already mentioned it. It has now 106,000 registered members, of which 27 are professionals and 73 is freelancers. This figure equals to 5.6 journalists per 10,000 inhabitants, which is double the rate of in the US, but much fewer than in the UK. UK is 9.6 journalists every 10,000 inhabitants. Then IMPG, Kazajit, FNSI, already mentioned them. Agicom, this is, I'll say something about it. It's a communication regulatory authority. It was established in 1997 as a semi-independent authority. Plays a central role in the implementation of European legislation. So European Media Freedom Act, Digital Service Act, and so on. Some figures. This is up to date. In Agicom, according to a survey by Agicom, dated 2025, there are currently 3,207 media outlets in Italy, of which 93 are daily newspapers, over 700 radio and TV stations, 94 news agencies, and 2,000 plus periodical and online media. Overall printed newspaper circulation, this is also, it's interesting to see that, between, in a decade between, since 2014, we had a huge decrease, minus 55.8% less newspapers. Quite an impressive figure. So major newspapers, in that slide, as you can see, Corriere della Sera is the main one, followed by Gazzetta dello Sport. It's a sport newspaper, and it's been always very, very popular. Then Repubblica, La Stampa, and so on. So the total copies printed by the sole Corriere della Sera is in 1 year. It's almost 68 million. with a 57% decrease over the last 10 years. Advent of new media and its consequences. The latest assault on journalism in Italy, as in the rest of the world, has come from the invasion of new communication tools: internet, social media, artificial intelligence. The internet and the social media have profoundly altered and polluted the world of information. Cell phone basically has become a prosthesis on our bodies. Every citizen is a kind of a producer of information, potentially. So the perception is that the role of journalist is no longer needed. Even publisher, who should definitely, care for their journalists, they basically they ended up considering their presence in the newsroom superfluous, just like, which is extremely sad. So they fail to understand that the product packaged in this way is no longer cannot be competitive, as demonstrated by the declining sales. I would like to quote Alessandra Costante, if I may. She's the secretary of FNSI. She said recently, I found on in the internet one of a quote: "We live in a paradoxical era. On the one hand, there's a growing demand for information, while on the other, we are witnessing a profound crisis in journalism and the role of journalists. So we want more information, but we don't want the journalists," which is a tragic comic, I would say. Very, very true. It's a very simple sentence, but very true. So the Italian media market is also experiencing profound transformation, shaped by the rise of digital platforms and the changing role of the television. I have some statistics, so we don't need to go through all of them, but some of them are quite interesting. For example, international tech companies like Google, Meta, Netflix dominate online revenues, presenting challenges for domestic traditional media players. Television still dominates the legacy media landscape in Italy, generating 72% of the traditional media sector revenues. So TV there's still hope for the television. But this is, it generates 72% of the revenues of the traditional media sector. So this doesn't include, obviously, the technical platform and the other things I told you. Online advertising continues its upward trajectory, now accounting for 61% of total advertising revenues. However, this segment is highly concentrated with major international platforms, so Google, Meta, and the one I mentioned, capturing 85% of digital ad revenues, leaving traditional publishers struggling to remain competitive, enjoying just 15%, the remaining 15%. Shift towards membership models keeps gaining traction among Italian digital board news outlets, but still not more than 9% of Italians are ready to pay for online news. According to another survey, it was even less, it was 7%. A graph, I put that graph titled Changing Media. TV news use has stabilized after years of decline, while print, you can see it in purple in the graphic, continues to shrink. Printed sources of news have decreased from 60 to 18% of the respondents between 2013 and 2021. It's interesting to see how, if you check the horizontal axis, 2015 is when the social media in dark blue have overtaken the printed news as a main source of news. That's quite an interesting part of the graph. summarize, although at a slower pace,
we've had a little bit of an interruption to your little signal, Bruno.
With the international tech platforms overtaking the role of broadcaster, players challenging established main features of the Italian media landscape persist. Television, although slightly declining, is still a main source of news. The broadcasting sector is still highly concentrated. We still have conflict of interest, the media instrumentalization, political partisanship. They are still distinguishing features of Italian news media. Trust and reliability. The next slide, please. In Italy, trust in news remains low. Let me also put it here.
Yeah, there's a little bit of interruption to the signal. What actually happens is eventually you come back and rapidly take over. Let me click into there we are. Bruno, you may well hear me that your signal's gone, and you were dealing with trust and reliability of the media. So what I'll do is I'll just come in here and improvise until you can come back. 65.5% of respondents to a survey said they had a moderate or high level of trust in at least one news media outlet. Less than a third have a high level of trust, which is very similar to the UK. Traditional media, TV, radio, print media confirm their position among the sources with the highest levels of trust, with a value exceeding 40%. In general, older users tend to place less trust in new outlets compared to traditional media and television. And the Reuters Oxford University data concludes that the most trustable news brands in Italy are ANSA, 74%, Il Sole, 24 Ore, 67%, the legacy media, essentially, the print newspapers, 60%, followed by RAI, the state broadcaster, 58%. Then going, I see you're coming back to us now. You're in the process of connecting to audio. We can't hear you just yet, but it's coming. It's coming. The sort of dancing dots on your screen. I improvised and dealt with trust and reliability of the media.
Okay.
So you can come into a discomforting figure. We've got you back.
Okay, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Jolly good.
So trust and reliability.
I dealt with that for you.
Okay, thank you. This comforting figure. According to RSF, so Reporters Sans Frontières, Italy ranks 49th out of 180 countries and territories in the World Press Index, 19th among the 27 EU countries. Italy is 8 places ahead of the US, but it's a very small consolation. We basically have Mauritania after us.
Oh, right.
And UK is in a good position. I think it's 20 now. United Kingdom is number 20. I think it was 23 last year, so you improved. And the score is 68.01. Let's see what's going to happen in the future. So let me see I think we are done. That's my presentation. Thank you for.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. It's fantastic. It's so interesting. What I'll do is I'll stop sharing the screen now, so we can come back to our remaining guests. And we can move over to discussion. No, that was an illuminating, educational, and fascinating. We learned. I relearned because I did do the Italian option in A-level history. So did Garibaldi and the Risorgimento and all of that, which is very exciting. We seem to be going in the opposite direction. But I've got about 2,073 questions to ask. No, not really. But I'll go over to our guests. So anybody would like to ask a question of Bruno, just unmute and go ahead.
I don't know if you can see.
Is Karen?
Hello.
Oh, that's Gerald. I see Gerald. Gerald is our president.
Hello. Thank you, Bruno. That was very, very interesting, and I'm fascinated how it has a parallel with the UK in much of what you presented this evening. One question: the classification. I can't remember which bit of the presentation it was, but you had about 109,000 members of an organisation.
ODG.
How do you classify somebody being able to be a member and call themselves a journalist? How is that monitored or substantiated?
Well, according to the ODG, I mean, there are two paths to become professional journalist. You are either publicist, which is kind of freelance journalist, or professional journalist, charter journalist, let's say. I had my state exam. So I worked as an intern for a magazine, and I did the state exam, which was pretty tough at the time. I had to study several months to pass it. And publicists don't do that, the state exam. So basically there are these two standards. 75% are non-professional. So they are part of the register, but they are not giornalisti professionisti because they didn't go through the state exam. The other 25% of professionisti like me, we went through the state exam. Right. This is basically a category that has been introduced. I told you when we had that, when the loosening in the rules inside the category, and that's when the professional journalists started to basically get penalized and compared to other people admitted to the register. It's most of my friends are publicists. I mean, I have nothing against them. It's just an easier way to be part of the register. I don't know. It's a big issue in Italy. It's a big issue. Many journalists don't accept this, don't accept the different standard, and it's something that hopefully is gonna change in the future. There are rumors now that the ODG wants to introduce a compulsory master's degree university to be part of the albo for the future, and I don't know. We're gonna see if this is going to happen. Apart from that,
that's so interesting, isn't it? That's so interesting.
Yeah,
Gerald, isn't it interesting? Because in this country, there's no doubt that there was a major resistance to the idea of professional registration. That was the key difference between the National Union of Journalists, the more socialist trade unionists, and the Chartered Institute of Journalists. Not that we didn't have socialists and communists and ultra Gramsci Marxists. We still have even much more extreme than Gramsci. God bless them. No, it's a fascinating difference, isn't it? I suppose, Gerald, the difference between the 25,000 going up to over 100,000, that would be as if the NUJ and the Institute was combined, and then we also had the public relations people. Is that, I suppose that would be the equivalent.
I presume it's been added to by the digital platforms, because obviously there are now, we know they're the big digital platform functions, but there are now people, individuals, sitting at home, sitting in their living rooms, purporting to be or calling themselves journalists, which is quite difficult to control the quality of the work that they produce. Is that similar in Italy?
Absolutely. It's a disaster. The tragedy is that, I don't know, if something happened, I mean, if this was the case of small platforms and no-name websites, it wouldn't be a big issue. The problem is that even national, the online versions of the national newspapers are hiring people who work like that. Recently, we even had many cases of articles put online, even actually printed on the magazine, with those sentences that appears when you use AI to produce an article, like, do you want me to change to the register? I mean, you want me to make it in a different way? And there was can you imagine the cut and copy, paste and copy stuff still printed on the magazine? It means it's unbelievable what's going on now. Unfortunately, it's really frustrating, and I think this problem is happening almost everywhere. But
and is there any debate going on at the moment in Italy how you could combat that?
I don't know if they're going to take action eventually, but there is obviously a debate. And I told you the very latest news is that the ODG wants to introduce a compulsory
qualification, master's
degree.
Yeah. We've never in this country had a recognized state process for journalists becoming registered through taking an examination. I mean, we've had the National Council for the Training of Journalists in the trade area, and then the universities began to create courses and qualifications, and they would link up with accreditation by the NCTJ and then the Broadcast Journalists Council. But it's been much looser and certainly not regulated. And I would say not particularly professionalized. The term professional tends to be a self-identification. Karim, I see you've unmuted. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I mean, Bruno, you did mention that in 1880s, the first association of Italian journalists was settling disputes. What kind of disputes were they?
When did you? In 1980s.
1880s.
Yeah. I have no idea. I mean, good question, actually. I mean, any kind of controversy between
stealing my story.
Exactly. Maybe that's I don't know. Actually, it's a good question.
Reviewing my book so badly that the insult is
exactly.
created irrecoverable damage. It's either that or a duel.
Exactly. No, I don't know actually, but
no, it's fascinating though.
Yeah.
I think if you had your association in 1880, I think you're 4 years before us.
Mm-hmm.
There you are. You see the Italians and the Roman civilization, thousands of years before ahead of us.
It was exactly 1880.
We started in Birmingham, if I'm right. Dom will know the facts and the figures.
It's true. We did.
There we are. Yeah. the similarities that are striking and frightening, of course, is the substantial reduction in print circulation, and then the revenues being effectively captured by the US global tech companies. I won't go on too much about this because I bored my colleagues in the Institute already so many times previously. But years ago, I saw the independence of a sovereign state in the digital arena having a digital territory. And essentially, the American tech companies invaded, captured it, and control the revenue. Without paying any leasehold, buying any freehold, dealing with import, tariffs. The Donald Trump's favorite tariffs are everything. Well, I think we should give the Americans a dose of nasty digital tariffs so we can get the money back into the profession of journalism.
Will be difficult.
Is that thought occurred to people in journalists in Italy yet? Dealing with the American. Okay, I'm going to use good old Gramscian Marxist language now. The colonization by the imperialist Americans of your media space.
Well, I mean, the press in Italy has been quite leftist in the past. I mean, for decades. So, I mean, there were obviously also papers aligned with the Americans, the NATO, and but mainly we had opposition papers in Italy. I mean, really, so many leftist ones, and quite prestigious with the really good journalists, good contributors, and now they are all a disaster. I don't read any newspaper anymore. I used to read Corriere della Sera until late 90s. Then I shifted to Repubblica, which is like social democratic, pretty good. But I mean, every time I go to Italy, I buy it, or maybe, I mean, not anymore. And I'm really disappointed. I don't like it anymore. It's not, I don't know. It's
you don't have a favorite cafe in Istanbul you can go to and grab a copy of your favorite Italian newspaper? You can't do that anymore.
I used to. When I moved to Turkey in 2008, I was going almost every day to Taksim Square.
Yeah.
And to buy La Repubblica. And then I gave up after maybe 2 years. Also because the papers were not coming anymore. It was all digital online. So they.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, after maybe 12. I mean, afternoon, 1 p.m., I could find Italian papers in Taksim Square. Yeah, but not anymore.
That's a shame. That's probably a generational thing as well.
It was a pleasure. It was a big pleasure, but to read it.
Yeah. One thing that did strike me, and I had our heart went out to Italy. We didn't go through that period in the 70s of the violence against journalists, the assassinations, particularly coming from left-wing terrorist groups.
Mainly magistrates and police agents, carabinieri. But a few journalists as well were killed. Yeah, I mentioned the three most famous ones. They did a movie out of a Giuseppe Impastato story, and
now we've only had Islamist attacks on politicians.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't spread out to going for journalists, but they have been threatening. I mean, it's been threatening, and I mean, it's not widely known because they don't like to say much about it. But the two Jewish news publishers and newspapers in Britain, the two main ones, which is the Jewish Chronicle and Jewish News, both those bodies, both those publishers have not only around the clock private security and their editors private security, but the counter-terrorism command at Scotland Yard has a range of measures and protection that I can't go into detail in public. Well, that's true also of the schools, but they're seen as major, obviously because of their media prominence and role. No, but I think that we're very fortunate there. Yeah, I mean the leftist adventures into, how should I put it, direct action, which was constructed as terrorism, was very kind of sort of university theoretical and middle class and thoroughly incompetent. They obviously hadn't got any advice from the provisional IRA, which I'm sure would have been available if they'd asked for it, but they didn't even have the gumption to, thank God. There was a famous trial called the Angry Brigade trial, and essentially what happened there, the academics behind it got away with it, but they turned the minds of middle class, I call them children, and there would be people between 18 and 25 who they set off explosives, but fortunately they didn't harm anybody. But so the future is challenging, and 9% membership. So I think we're all in the same boat here between Italy and the United Kingdom, and where it's going to go, we're not sure. Did Janice, Dom, and Gabriella, and Kim, do you have any? I don't mean to put you on the spot. Any questions you wanted to ask?
I was just going to ask Bruno if he did see a way forward.
Oh, well, there we are. Gerard's always saying to me, be positive. Why don't you ask the positive question? Thank you, Janice. The way forward. Over to you, Bruno. It's all down to you now. You got any ideas?
Sorry, about what?
Have you got any ideas the way forward? What can we? Yeah.
No,
The newspapers.
no, I'm not that ambitious. No.
Oh, I'm crestfallen.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Well, I think membership. If I think the biggest mistake we made in the United Kingdom was giving everything away for free. I think in that the bridging, there was quite a bridging period, which I think has now reached the tipping point of decline, where you had the investment in online. So you then bring in your audience, and then you quickly go into premium part behind paywalls. And so the Economist and the Financial Times, it works for them. It's successful. It doesn't work, and the Guardian, the other way through it is
the subscription.
Political membership. I mean, the Guardian basically said, look, we've got a big global private trust fund, and so they enjoyed making losses of 35 to 55 million pounds a year. Got rid of the editor, who was quite happy for that to carry on, Rusbridger, and brought in somebody to say, right, look, actually, we're a political movement. We're not saying we're a political movement, but if you want us to continue, then you need to give us a subscription, which is, I suppose membership is a similar thing. And now I think the Guardian membership income has exceeded their income from their declining print process. So that's clearly a way forward. Kim has got a question. Over to you, Kim. I see your hands raised. Hello, Kim. Or maybe it was just a salute. There's emojis. Any other positive ideas? The way ahead from our people here.
Hi, can I jump in?
So,
hi,
is that Gabriella?
It's Gabriella. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good morning from the land of the rising sun. I'm in Japan. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, thank you, Bruno, for a really fascinating talk.
Hi there.
Yeah, actually, my first job when I was 14 my first work experience.
The volume of newspapers in Italy per population is than particularly national ones than in the UK. I think that was quite intriguing. So really, I think the news organisations, they've got to successfully transmogrify into the print digital arena. Again, being another old-fashioned bore years ago, I was saying, don't abandon the younger generations in relation to print. Yeah, and in fact, I think the institute, even before I came on board, had a national campaign in schools, but I don't think it got enough support and collaboration with the educational world. But it can be done through primary and then tertiary education in terms of civic studies, public service studies, recognizing professional legacy media compared to social media. Unfortunately, I would argue that the largely left-dominated universities, what actually happened is the practice journalism part in universities had to actually be in departments that were cultural, sociological studies, and so intellectually they were, very post-Marxist, neo-Marxist, and highly critical of legacy media. So you had this weird dichotomy of practice university lecturers teaching how to do journalism, and then with their values and standards, and then the students would go off to do the media history and the media analysis courses with the Marxist academics who would all say, all those professional journalists, they're corrupted robots of capitalism, and bringing down civilization, which I know I've exaggerated, but it hasn't helped much,
Right. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so that undermines public confidence in the media, I think, and then of course they become the teachers. In the university field, they then go into the schools, and I'd be very surprised to find a school that will invite. Happened to Janice and I a year or two ago. We were invited to do a presentation to, I think, sixth formers on a journalism career, but I think it's only happened to us once. We put together a PowerPoint, but it's very rare for professional journalists to be invited into schools to talk about the role of a journalist in society and why it's important for democracy and all of that. It's good. Well, on those, thank you so much, Bruno. It's an absolutely brilliant, outstanding presentation, and we really have.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, Tim. Have you come back? Oh, good. We found you.
I'm on my phone. I'm usually on a computer when I do this, but it's just driven me mad trying to unmute the thing because it's a small screen.
You got a question?
Yeah, it's going back to your previous discussion about people coming into journalism without qualifications. I'm one of those people. I was trained, for want of a better word, as a copy taker on the national newspapers in this country, Daily Express, Sunday Express, Daily Star, when they were in Fleet Street, and also on the Telegraph Group. I was mentored by Jean Rook, who was quite a famous columnist on Daily Express. Yeah. She knew I hadn't had any formal training, but we respected each other, and she always encouraged me to write. And I've written for quite a lot of local newspapers. I'm currently writing for TCW, and I do some stuff for a local. These websites I'm mainly writing for now. It's a very well respected local one called Rye News. So yeah, I'm not formally trained.
No,
but
copy takers, Kim. That was the trade route in to Fleet Street in the early to middle part, going into the later part of the 20th century. Some of the finest editors of British national newspapers started as copy takers.
Oh, that's encouraging to know. But I'm still in touch with Peter Hitchens because he's one of my referees on my CV. I'm retired now. I've just become a state pensioner, but I'm still, I still like to do a bit of freelance for TCW. I get on very well with Kathy. I just did a piece about the national anthem. Should we change it? That was on this week. I've got another one going on tomorrow, and I've got stuff to write for Rai News as well. And most of my stuff has been on TV. Has been because I live on the Channel Coast, filming actual landings on the beach of illegal immigrants. And I've done quite a lot on GB News for that. Not recently because they've stopped bringing them into Dungeness, but. That's my background. What I wanted to ask was, can you see me still?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Yeah.
Yeah. My phone keeps shutting down. I wanted to ask about, now in this country, we've got a lot of YouTubers that are not journalists. They call themselves citizen journalists. Some of them are quite good, actually. I think this is largely due to the fact that mainstream media has now become it's so much in this rut, very political rut of they all seem to be singing from the same hymn sheet, and people are so fed up of this because we've got this whole far left and far right thing going on, and I find the YouTubers, quite a lot of them are very sort of in the middle. There's one who used to be a PR, Lauren the Insider. She's currently doing some really good stuff with regard to all the Jeffrey Epstein stuff and all the Prince Andrew, all that kind of involvement. She's very meticulous. She's been doing a lot of looking into all these documents,
Yes.
Is that the same in Italy? Are there a lot of Italian sort of freelance YouTubers?
What a good question.
Well, there are. I don't have any stats for sure because I'm not following much this issue. But I follow up international politics, and we have many independent YouTubers in Italy who are really, really knowledgeable. I don't know how they can get access to even. I mean, how can I say? I don't know where they get their sources from, but many of them they turned out to, after months, they turned out to be right to report. There are a few very interesting channels. For example, for the military aspects of the war in Ukraine, I follow up a couple of Italian YouTubers who are really knowledgeable, really good, technically prepared, and there are a few of those. I can't tell you about the daily life, or there are many journalists, also freelance journalists, who write on Fatto Quotidiano or other
like Substack is the big thing, isn't it?
Other independent newspapers who also have their own channel, but they are journalists, so they have a parallel communication channel, and they stream, they online stream. Some of them have a lot of followers. I'm not following much, but definitely it's a big phenomenon also in Italy. Absolutely, yeah. Some are. Some are quite. I would say reliable. Yeah, trustable. Yeah.
Thank you for that. For answering my question.
That's good.
Can I jump in? Sorry.
Is that Gabriella?
It is. Yes, I'm back.
Well
Sorry, I
done.
interrupted you there, Tim. It's hard to find
go ahead.
time to jump in. But yes, sorry for my connection here. I was just saying, I started when I was 14, actually, with my work experience working for a Gazette. So it's fascinating to hear about the history of that word. Really fascinating. Question about the trust in journalism these days for real journalists and not AI journalism, which is taking over so scarily. How do we, it's so interesting how the statistics between the UK and Italy are similar in terms of trust in journalism. Where do we go from here? And do we watermark our work more visibly, just like AI is bringing in, or rather governments are bringing in kind of regulations where it must be announced if it's AI, but even that regulation still has a long way to go in terms of its implementation. So where do we go as real journalists to validate our work to the public eye?
Are there any movements in Italy to we use the term kite mark or to stamp to authenticate professional journalism as opposed to AI?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, even Giorgia Meloni has stand against AI, and at the United Nations recently they said she's kind of promoting this. Regulating every aspect of life related to AI. Because I assume also journalism. I haven't read specifically about it, but yeah, absolutely. There is a. I'm thinking if I remember reading something lately. Recently. But I can't tell you at this stage. But absolutely, no. It's something continuously discussed. And like I said, I told you 15-20 minutes ago that we even have it's becoming a big issue because even on mainstream, print media, we see articles with that sentence, with that which is an absolute scandal. It really means that there's not even any kind of check. Any proofreading after writing the article and laying the article. So there is a wide use, and that it has to be regulated. That's for sure. I truly doubt it will be possible to cancel it. There will be always someone who uses it, but
I think we
what's happening in the UK, for example?
Well, the Institute, Gerald's initiative, we're convening an industrial convention, really, at the Reform Club on the 3rd of March. We've got the News Media Association, all of the trade unions, all of the associations for public relations. We've got the Independent Press Standards Organization, and we're leading the discussion on the need for transparency and how this can be achieved in order to emphasize and underpin the necessary trust between readers and professional journalism. And we're seeking to do this in a very positive way. We have on the council, Hamish Monk, a young journalist who is very much an expert in journalism and artificial intelligence. He's researched it in many depths and dimensions. He's quite ahead of the game. And he's going to start off the discussion. I think, we're seeing at New York State, for example, there's a proposal to legislate for journalism publications to identify the extent to which they use artificial intelligence. That's on a state level in the USA, and only a proposal. I think. I'm not sure what the consensus is. Well, the consensus at the Institute, we had a debate on a motion which agreed and supported the idea that there should be a voluntary disclosure. How that is done should be sensible, and it should be done in such a way to highlight that the use of the AI has been to improve the quality. To actually support the journalism rather than replace the journalism. So I think that's where we are at the moment. We've certainly had a few scandals. Some public relations agencies created individuals who didn't exist with quotations and circulated media releases and lazy publications. Prestigious legacy publications did articles and quoted these non-existent people. And there have been hoaxers who've pretended to be journalists and used AI to research and write and pitch and have published feature articles. So I think the industry and the profession is very much alive to it. And I'm pleased the way that very pleased with the way that we've really led the debate, and Gerald, with his wide nexus of contacts and ability to talk to very influential bodies, has brought together this meeting, this discussion. So that's progress. We think.
When do you see like the next turning point, like in the near to midterm future, like conventions where real legislation will be put forward, to protect us?
Well, in relation to journalism, my position is the less legislation, the better. Mm-hmm. I mean, the last seminar session was looking at how journalism law in this country between 1938, 1953, I think, and 1954 and 1963 has exponentially, I think, to the present age, mm-hmm. has exponentially expanded to the point that we're overwhelmed with restrictions and regulations that are such that in order to challenge a decision that goes against journalism, the legal costs are prohibitive, and it has a negative effect on media freedom. I think I would certainly be in favour of legislation which prevents AI. I think the laws already exist, but if there are these new digital internet dimensions, prevents crimes against the person, fraud. But we will find out where the debate goes. It'll be interesting. And the Independent Press Standards Organisation, which is the voluntary regulatory body, and depends on contracts with those news publishers, former print legacy publishers. They're researching and looking into it, and their big problem was that they were overwhelmed with an exponential increase in complaints that people were doing through artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly they got literally hundreds of complaints against publications that all look very, very similar. And we're using AI, and a lot of the arguments, a lot of the complaints had hallucinatory, fictional ipso rulings that had never ever happened. Mm-hmm. So well, that's do you think there should be laws, Gabriella?
I think I'm specifically thinking of AI kind of presenting itself as real news, and just how we protect real journalists and real news that doesn't necessarily incorporate AI. Like, for example, I used to work in like kind of written media, but now I do a lot of documentary work. But I insist, I'm a bit of a traditionalist, I insist on not using AI, even if the AI assistants are kind of available and kind of in my face with, would you like some help with this? AI can do this for you and save time. I always decline it because I'm quite proud of creating the work and editing the whole thing myself. That's kind of part of my work as a creative journalist. So in that regard, I'd like to be kind of protected from AI kind of claiming that,
Yes, no, absolutely. Well, there is the issue of AI stealing your originality and authenticity. All credit to you. I can see that being high, a strong qualitative brand, as it were, in the future market. But I mean, we can add I said the problem of it being stolen from you. I mean, I've been offered a settlement from Anthropic, $3,000 because they took the entirety of one of my books.
Wow.
And absorbed it into their training world, as it were. Among I think hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other books. the naughty side of me says that what a shame they didn't do the same for 10 other books, and I'm not getting a settlement of $30,000 instead of $3,000.
Yeah, but
no, but you're absolutely.
It's a real issue, isn't it, going forward? It's a real issue. How do we become friends with AI without it taking away our credentials?
Yes, Gerald.
Well, obviously, you can opt out. You can put a rider on anything that you produce, stating that you have not used AI in research, writing, or whatever the piece is, or the broadcast, or whatever. So you can opt out. But I think we have to be realistic. Like all technology, AI is with us. We've got to accept it. And we have to, I feel personally, treat it as just another tool.
Yeah.
And like all tools, you don't have to use it if you don't need to.
I think that's a great idea, though, kind of making a statement in some part of the work. Yeah, I think that could solve it.
I think keep the individual control. Anything that, lots of documents that I've been involved in producing, there's been a copyright, and that's another can of worms, and we don't have time to talk about that. But at the bottom of the page, I am encouraging people to state that they haven't used AI. It's not a negative, because I think we've got to accept AI is there, but there are things that we can do as individuals.
Thank you for
what
that.
I do a daily newspaper review of the national UK newspapers and the regional UK newspapers. Now, as you probably noticed, I've got visual problems. It's quite difficult for me, even with computers, to and enlargement to read all of the front pages in terms of headlines and stand firsts and everything. So I do ask AI to transcribe the text from the front pages, and so so I can then read the text and turn that into the review. Now I disclose that AI is used for to that extent in the review, and that's where it's positive. Another positive again is I can't really. I mean, the old days when transcribing sound interviews and so on, I just don't have the visually and the cognitive energy to do that. So there's now a program, I think it's called Whisperer, Apple Whisperer. Actually, I'll just double check.
I think it's useful. I think it's useful for kind of anticipating subtitles, as long as the human eye can kind of, have the final say over the edit. Yeah,
absolutely. Mac Whisper is a program, and without subscribing to the software, the freeware part of it, if you've got 10 minutes of an interview or sound, it will then transcribe that into text for you, and you then go back into that, and obviously it needs some correction and so on. So that's a form of artificial intelligence, which I think is quite legitimate. It doesn't involve writing and making the judgment calls on the review, writing and making the judgment calls on the reviewing process.
Okay, thank you for having me. Yeah.
Oh, it's a pleasure. No, thank everybody, and of course, the greatest thanks is to Bruno.
Thank you so much
for stimulating and educating and making us feel quite kind of relieved that we have solidarity with fellow journalists in another country, similar population, quite different history, and really educational how the specific history of Italy shaped the journalism, and it can be argued that journalism shaped the history, and a similar argument could be made for Britain as well. So, and thank you for everybody sparing your time on in the United Kingdom, one of the better, if not the best, weather day this year so far, and giving up part of your evening. And the next seminar will be on Picture Post, the photojournalism magazine from 1938 to 1957. That'll be at the end of March. We've also got IPSO, Independent Press Standards Organisation, coming in with two of their leading executives dealing with complaints, providing a session at the end of April. And Bruno will be back with us in July to tell us all about Turkey, which is, we're really looking forward to that. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Round of applause to everyone.
Yes.
I'm
Good
so
night.
glad that we could talk to
Thank
each other
you
from
very
different parts
much.
of the world. Take
My
care.
Good
pleasure.
night. Good night.
Enjoy the
Very
rest of your
good.
evening.
Thank you. You too. Good night.